Hey, I just thought I'd say a little word on the discussion since we're already underway. It's discussion three. So these discussions, you've got if you look back at the discussions, you've got discussions two, three, four, and five deal with the readings from Perkins, right, and the same number of quizzes. But that really isn't a lot of the class. I mean, it's enough to get you going, but I don't want you to feel like everything hinges on Perkins as a he's just a writer I chose to get you going on a few discussions and get you reading some good prose. He's a really good writer. He's a New York Times #1 bestseller in nonfiction, which is kind of a big deal, you know. So he's a good. It's good to expose yourself to him. Now, that said, am I endorsing what Perkins is saying? No. I mean, if I was featuring William Least Heats Moon's Blue Highways, I wouldn't believe everything he wrote in it. I wouldn't. It's an autobiography of some guy who drove across the country in a van. If Toni Morrison, she writes Beloved. A lot of teachers in Writing 121 teach that. They have students reading an entire novel. Does that mean that all of Toni Morrison's views are being endorsed by the instructor? No. So in the case of Perkins, I happen to meet Perkins. He's a sharp cookie, but I certainly wouldn't trust my back to him. He's as he says, once an economic hitman, always an economic hitman, right? And people are interested in hitmen. I mean, the James Bond films, for instance. I use that visual for discussion too. One of the highest grossing franchises of all time, right? Written by a guy that used to run MI6, which is the equivalent of the CIA in United States, but it's in England, right? Is that guy trustworthy? No, I don't think so. He wrote some best-selling novels, and the Ian Fleming wrote the James Bond series. But does that even mean that Ian Fleming is a great writer? Well, he certainly had some heavy-duty contacts in the publishing industry to get those things published, in addition to the motion picture industry. So all I'm saying is the world's a lot more interlinked than most people like to think when it comes to Hollywood. As you may have noticed from the last year, the best screenplays aren't being done. Unfortunately, it's very incestuous. It's about who you know. It's about who you're related to, and that's just the way the world works. It's just kind of sad but true. So, what I'm getting at is, no, I'm not endorsing Perkins, but he is bringing up some interesting insider views of the world in which he worked. He's not just an inveterate liar. He is revealing. One of the reasons why people enjoy reading his stuff is he has a lot of facts in there, and he is writing about a real organization. He did work for it, and whether or not he's picking and choosing and schmoozing on some details, who can say? But the overall picture of what he's writing is factual. And, he dressed it up a little bit for sure to make it more interesting or whatever. But that's not to say that I wouldn't find that objectionable. For instance, in your first essay, or even your introductory discussion. Are you a slave to absolute reality? Well, that's not the way famous writers write their autobiographies. They take license. They switch things around a little bit. It's maybe you're an idealist and you want to think that every single autobiography you read is 100% true, but I hate to disappoint you, it's not. So sometimes smaller things, liberties are taken with smaller details to make them fit more comfortably together. I'm just trying to honestly teach you how to write, and that's the main purpose of this class, right? Don't get too carried away with worrying too much about what Perkins is saying. I mean, it's good to expose you to it, I think, because it's an interesting topic to write about. like I say, some teachers would have you read an entire novel. Like I remember there was a couple of years ago when I saw 3 or 4 classes at the Writing 121 level were having students read the entire novel Beloved by Toni Morrison. That's not only is it a challenging novel, it's a fat novel, and it's very controversial. It's far more controversial than Perkins' book. Far more controversial, the stuff in that book. I've read it twice. I love the novel, but it is controversial. Some of the stuff in there having to do with ghosts, the supernatural, all this other stuff, right? So put it in perspective. This isn't a political class. This isn't a class based on conspiracy theories. You'll see that a majority of your discussions are focusing on writing key points. And my lectures are all about writing. I've written extensively. This class has far, far more reference resources in it than most Writing 121 classes. This class has more meat and potatoes about writing than 9 out of 10 Writing 121 classes. And no, it isn't slavishly beholden to a workbook as though you're some kind of a drone. I mean, in 1st and 2nd grade, I learned entirely out of workbooks. In 3rd grade, entirely out of workbooks practically. Now, that is a horrible education. I had to really make up for that. And one of the ways I made up for it was my outside reading choices. I was reading Plato in the 8th grade by my own choice. Socrates, Shakespeare. I just had it in me. I wanted to be educated. I had to educate myself to a large extent. Yes, and then I got to the point where I could get into a college like Columbia University. But, I mean, I got there because I wanted to do it. My parents didn't push me. My parents were saying, hey, honey, come on down, watch The Love Boat and Fantasy Island. Let's watch television together and be a family. I mean, and my mom had a degree. She was an elementary school teacher, for crying out loud. So, no, my parents, my dad came from a long line of fishermen. Yeah, he went to college, and unfortunately, when he was like 2 years old, he inhaled a piece of string, and it got in his body and caused some physical problems that gave him dyslexia and some other things to overcome. Because that you get a piece of string in there, it's bad for you. It'll start rotting. But he overcame it, and he became city engineer of Salem, Oregon, for 20 years, and went on to have a really good career as a civil engineer. A lot of his stuff, I mean, he had acute dyslexia, based because of the physical problems attributed to, inhaling a rather large piece of yarn at a young age. I know it sounds bizarre, but so here I had 2 parents that were completely anti-intellectual. They didn't even like the idea of me reading Shakespeare. I rebelled by reading Shakespeare, That was my idea of rebellion. I also played the drums. I did a lot of other things. I played in marching band, orchestra. I could read snare drum charts that looked like a chicken with ink on its feet had run all over the page. I mean, very dense, But all that took discipline. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the reason why I'm sitting here as your teacher in front of you isn't because I had all this handed to me on a silver platter. I had to work my ass off to get through college, and I had to drop out of. I got my master's degree from NYU, but I had to drop out of an Ivy League college, Columbia University, because I couldn't pay for it. I was in there, Talk about a heart-rending reality check. I mean, I could be teaching at Harvard University right now, perhaps, if I had the money to finish that degree. But I just didn't have the money. I just couldn't do it, So, as far as this class goes, effort really does matter. Being a self-starter really does matter. When you're an online student, you need to take some responsibility and read all the directions thoroughly for all the assignments, especially the essays. And when it comes to the discussions, answer the 2 other discussions to get those extra 2 points for the 200 word, and then you get the 400 word, the double. When you don't have quizzes later on in the term, you'll find that the discussions double in size. And then, that's my little dog. You want to see my dog? Come here, Isla. Come here. She wants to go outside because it's already 10:30 and I haven't taken her out, and she wants to go outside. She's a cute little thing. She's a barkless Basenji. And I just ate garlic for breakfast. Isn't that weird? But I'm doing it for health reasons. She's a cute little thing. Anyway, so answer 2 other discussions. Do yourself a favor. This lecture has gotten a bit long. I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of where I'm coming from in the class, and to dispel, you look on Rate My Professor, a lot of people say, oh, this class is all political. It's not. It's not. I just took a writer to try to get people to write about some issues. John Perkins raises some controversial James Bond style stuff that has a little bit of meat and potatoes to it, involved with economics and stuff. It's just to get you writing, folks. And as far as this discussion goes, don't forget to respond to 2 other discussions to get the extra 2 points, man. That's gravy. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye. Kirk out. Looking forward to seeing your discussion.